So I have, can I not bring my phone? See my other phone?
Pockets.
I might not have brought it. You never saw me with my phone, right?
I did not.
No.
All right, so I don't have it. But there were, on Monday night, last Monday night, we were on the roof of Shauli's building, apartment building, and he was grilling. There was a spot where he could grill, and we're up there, Shauli's family, Tzippy and I, eating, grilled chicken wings and things like that. And suddenly we see this kid coming with a goat, a little goat, onto the roof. I have a picture. I've actually even some video, but I think I must have left it at.
Would you call it a Chad Gadya?
Yeah, there was one goat, Chad Gadya, and it was, I would say, the size of like a medium-sized dog. It was just a little goat. And this kid comes on the roof with the goat, and then some other kids, and then the parents come on. And they are going to shech that goat, not right there.
Okay.
Not right there.
Okay.
They were going to keep the goat for a couple days. And then this guy with his kolel were going to shech the goat, and then they were going to eat it. So I didn't think of it at the moment. It was just bizarre in the moment. And we took pictures of it, and Shauli's kids were all petting it and everything. And then it dawned on me that this is exactly what somebody would have brought for the Korban Pesach onto the thing. And it was like I was getting a little wink. That's what I felt like. I was getting a little wink from Hashem. I had assumed that I would witness the Korban Pesach. Not exactly Korban Pesach, but I did see somebody with a little goat that they were planning on shechting and eating.
So the Korban Pesach would have been a goat and a lamb.
It could be either a goat or a lamb. It could be a, you have the choice of either one. Oh, Jason, how are you? You look good. You sound silent, but you look good. Now you have sound. So get one highlight from Japan, a little something from Japan.
Oh, well, the whole thing is a highlight, but definitely seeing the sumo matches in person for the first time.
Do the wrestlers appear bigger than you would imagine or smaller than you would imagine?
They're pretty big. They're pretty big. They average about 6'2", 6'3", and about 368 pounds or something like that. They are big, large men. But, for me, it was like, if you were a Japanese person and had watched the Cubs, for 10 years, and then suddenly somebody gave you a ticket to go to Chicago and then got tickets to see them in Wrigley Field, that's what it was like. Yeah, it was, to go from watching it on TV for so long to seeing it in person was really something.
And the rest of your family, because the fact that you have enjoyed sumo wrestling all this time does not necessarily mean it.
Well, I got my kids into it, so they know the names of all the key wrestlers.
Uh-huh.
And even my wife enjoys it, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I the closest I've come to it is going to a WCW wrestling event at the United Center with my kids years ago when they were very into it.
Yeah.
Like in the late 90s. But I'm sure that I am certain that only comes to the very base of the mountain of excitement that you had.
Well, I mean, they call it's like the soul of Japan, is in sumo. Now, theoretically, WCW could be the soul of America, but that would sort of be rather unfortunate. But
It would be. You'd be surprised who was in the audience.
yeah,
For that. It was
Diverse.
a diverse, yeah, it was pretty diverse. Do people show up in like suits and ties for the sumo?
yeah, all kinds, you got businessmen coming in suits and ties, you've got people, coming in sort of regular street clothes, you have some people dressed up in like traditional kimono. Yeah. That's very cool.
I look forward to hearing more about it.
The word my client says.
Yeah.
These people are massive. I love the word massive.
Massive.
Yeah,
That's
You know,
a
the
that's
word
a good word.
dude, like,
In today's studio, we have David Bojan, Liz Goroff, Annie Levenstein. At some point, Lynn Albin will be making her presence known to us, I believe. It's good to see Jason and to see Jean's avatar and to see Lois's avatar. I'm very grateful to be able to share Torah with you guys. It's been a day or two since the last time we did it. This week is a 2 Parsha week, Achremot and Kedoshim. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about Kedoshim. Kedoshim is not quite the center, but sort of, I think, towards the center of the book of Vayikra. It's number 7. It's Torah portion number 7. So it's right around the middle of Vayikra. And it's the surprise of the book of Vayikra, because it doesn't deal with sacrifice. There's something, 1 or 2 things about sacrifices, but for the most part, it deals with those mitzvahs between people, including love your neighbor as yourself, makes an appearance in this week's Torah portion. Not to be jealous, not to take revenge, to fear your mother and father. Not to put a stumbling block before the blind. So this is chapter 19 of Vayikra, and some of the most important mitzvahs bein adam lechavero, between people, find themselves in this week's Torah portion. I think I suggested a while back that with with chiasms, Rabbi Foreman makes this point that there are many times in the Torah chiasms, which are teachings where the first and last verse reflect each other in subject matter. The second and the second last reflect each other. The third and the third to last reflect each other. You see these, they come up in biblical text, and they are fascinating to behold, but they have certain properties, these chiasms, and one of them is that the center is where the focus is, that if you can find the center, you will find the message that is most important in this teaching. It's sort of like imagine you have a painting of a river. There in the painting, there's water, and then above the water, there's, let's say, there's some ground and there's a tree, and then there's the sky. So, and then it's reflected in the water. So the sky's at the top, sky's at the bottom. Then you have that chiastic structure is how you would experience that painting. The stuff at top is on each end, etc. So if you think of the 5 books like that, so there is some expectation that what you see at the beginning is what you would see at the end. And as you're moving towards the middle, you're getting towards what might be the potent, most essential part of the message. You're sort of being directed to look towards the middle. And if you saw it that way, then the middle book, you could say, the middle book of the Torah is somehow the most concentrated, potent part of the message of the Torah, and that would be the book of Vayikra. And then as you get towards Vayikra, as you're looking into Vayikra itself, if you go towards the center, you would get to this Torah portion. When we were learning this Torah portion, not terribly long ago, in our Thursday morning women's class, we even saw that there was sort of chiastic structure in this chapter 19. That if you look at the beginning and towards the end of it, it seems to have similar themes, and we were noticing something similar to that. So again, not necessarily for the purpose of studying chiasms, but just that idea that you're being drawn towards the center. Somebody could argue that some of the most important lessons of the Torah are going to be taught in this Torah portion. In fact, Rabbi Akiva makes that point when he says that the mitzvah ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, the mitzvah of love your neighbor as yourself, zeh klal gadol b'Torah. This is, if you wanted to capture the general message of the Torah, if you wanted to pick a verse that somehow expresses the message of the Torah, captures it, ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha would be your mitzvah. And a version of that, maybe the mirror version of that teaching, love your neighbors yourself, which is that which is hateful unto you, don't do to your friend. So that's how, when Hillel was approached by somebody who said he'll convert, but he needs to hear the Torah on one foot. Now he wants to be taught the Torah on one foot, which seems to mean he wants just a brief kind of encapsulation of the Torah. That's what he told him. He said, that which is hateful unto you, don't do to your fellow, and the rest is commentary, go and learn. So this mitzvah, or this area of the Torah, then you could see how it's somehow here is where it's all pointing to the middle of the book of Vayikra, the last place you'd think to look for the deepest part of the Torah, because it just seems to be about, or it has been, for the details of sacrificial rites or things that are happening in the Mishkan and the tabernacle, esoteric Torah, and then you somehow stumble upon some of the deepest stuff, especially this deep stuff when it comes to our relationship with other people, those mitzvahs. And it all begins with a line, Vayidaber Hashem Moshe Lemor, God spoke to Moshe saying, Daber el kol adas b'nei Yisrael, speak to the entire congregation of Israel, va'amarta aleihem, and say to them, kadoshim tiyu, be kadosh, which is translated usually as be holy. Ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokeichem, because I am kadosh. I, the Lord your God, am kadosh. So kadosh is one of those words. Holy is one of those words which we use often, but we don't necessarily have a very specific knowledge of what it means. What specifically are we being asked when we're told to be holy? What does it mean to say holy? What does it mean to say that the Jewish people are holy? What does it mean to say the Mishkan is, the tabernacle is holy? What does it mean to say somebody is holy? Because we use those terms with regard to people, we use the terms with regard to places. We use it, God himself uses it to characterize himself. We talk about holy time. So what do we mean when we use the word holy? So I had something on my phone, which of course I left at home. I did good. I brought my iPad for the Zoom, but I did not bring my phone. So, because I had looked it up on something called Balashon. There's a couple sites where if you get lucky, this person, it's a group of people, I think, at these sites. One's called Balashon. There's another one, Philologos, which is, I think, done by the people at the Forward, the magazine or whatever newspaper, the Jewish Forward. These are columns or websites now where people are focusing, blogs, where people are focusing on a particular word and really looking deeply into its origins, how it got to mean what it did, or what the perhaps etymology of that word is. So the word kadosh was the topic of a blog entry or article from this site Balashon. A balash is like a detective, so Balashon is like a language detective or something. So and they started by saying how intimidated they were to look up this word. I mean, to really tackle this word, because if you think about all the various versions of this word that have become so important in Jewish ritual and thought, you have the Kaddish. The Kaddish is based on that word. You have the Mikdash, which is the sanctuary, the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, which is the sanctuary, is built on that word.
Rabbi, I'm sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you, but I just put up the link to it in the chat if you are interested in bringing
All right,
it
let
up.
me see how let's see. Can I,
I mean, at the very least, you could read it, whether you.
let
share
me
it.
see. Oh, here we go, chat. So, but it won't show up to the other people, right?
Yeah, it will in the chat.
Can you see it?
Anyone
You
who's
could
on
use
Oh,
Zoom.
if you go to the chat.
If you, yeah.
All
if
right.
people Go to the chat.
Oh,
right.
thank you. That was really nice of you. Thank you very much. All right, so I'm gonna just read a little bit of what it says here, okay? A reader asked me to write about the Hebrew words kadosh and kodesh, generally translated as holy and holiness, respectively. It's taken me a few months to get to the request because, while I agree that the root kuf daled shin deserves examination, the word is so loaded with religious meaning and pervasive in Jewish liturgy and culture that I found it somewhat intimidating to tackle. For example, here are just a few of the important terms that derive from the root kuf daled shin. Kiddush, the prayer and blessing over wine inaugurating Shabbos and holidays. Kedusha, which is the section of the Amidah which is part of the repetition of the Amida and emulates the praise angels give to God. I was once watching the Grammy Awards, and Carlos Santana won a Grammy Award. This must have been about 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. There was some song where he played, he didn't sing, he just played the guitar on it. And I forgot who it was who sang it, but it sort of brought him back into notoriety. And he won a Grammy for it. And he got on stage and he goes, Kadosh, 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 Hashem. He says in Hebrew, Kadosh, 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 Hashem, he didn't say Hashem, Tzvakos. Anyway, so that is the Kedusha. That might be her. He's not.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, but for some reason
He knew the words.
yeah, for some reason he
Practice.
he decided to do that in Hebrew. And then there's Kaddish, and then there's Kiddushin, which is the betrothal, the first, that's marriage step one. There is something called Hektish, which is property that you are donating to the Beit HaMikdash, and then there's Mikdash itself. And looking at the Bible, there are over 800 words deriving from that root. Our versions of it daunting, no? But that doesn't mean I shouldn't try. So I'm acknowledging that I won't touch every aspect of the word on every aspect of the word. Perhaps I'll update this post or write another one in the future with additional insights. So let's start by looking at the forms of the verb, and then he talks about it in the kal form and in the nifal form and in the PL form and etc. The hifil and the hitpael. We can see from, and then I'm not going through every permutation that he went through, but we can see from these various definitions, the root kuf dalet shin has two primary connotations. One, to be holy, in the sense of lofty, exalted, or even perfect. So lofty or exalted or perfect, and perhaps closer to the divine. This is captured well by the English word holy, or the word hallow, to hallow, which derive from an earlier root meaning whole, uninjured, and is ultimately a cognate with whole, W-H-O-L-E. The number two is to set apart or separate. Perhaps this meaning could better be expressed with the adjective sacred and sanctified, both of which derive from roots indicating separation or consecration. There are certainly occasions where that sense overlaps with exalted and holy. Something dedicated to God has an exalted status, and anything holy would be separate and distinct from an object without that position. But when there is no such overlap, it allows for what he calls the forbidden meeting in biblical Hebrew and the designated meeting in modern Hebrew. Okay, so at some point, this person, Balashon, quotes, they say, I'd like to end with a quote from the philosopher and theologian, Rabbi Eliezer Berkovitz, who, by the way, was on the staff at the HTC at the Skokie Yeshiva for many years. He wrote a lengthy essay entitled The Concept of Holiness in a book, Man and God, Studies in Biblical Theology. I can't review the entire essay here. I do recommend reading it, he writes, but I think the last paragraph is very profound. In our own analysis, interest was concentrated on the meaning of the term as it is applied to God and man, but we have not lost sight of its purely ritualistic significance either. We have found that the word holy does not stand for divine nature in whatever way that nature is understood. It is not a mere otios epithet of God, but it is a specific attribute of the deity. and it is consistently used all through the Bible in that specific sense. So it is a specific attribute. So when God says, I am holy, he means something specific. And when he's asking us to be holy, he means something specific, rather than indicating transcendence, because that was one of the possible meanings, that something is transcendent. It is specially in the realm of God. It seems to be inseparable from the idea of immanence. When we think of transcendence, so we think of something that's beyond, that is beyond the human, beyond the terrestrial. We think of something that is unreachable in a certain sense, in that it is so deeply intertwined with our nature of the divine. At the same time, he was saying, it seems to be inseparable from the idea of immanence, that we are somehow connected to God. Far from meaning inaccessibility, it reveals closeness and association. It is not the mysterium tremendum, if anything, it is its very opposite. So somehow, even though there is a sense in this word, kadosh, kuf daled shin, there is some sense we have that it is something so elevated, so separate from the mundane and the terrestrial, that it is almost unapproachable. There is in it a sense of immanence and connection, that somehow in this behavior, which is going to be mentioned in this book, that the details of what follows after he says, I want you to be holy, somehow in these, there is a opportunity to make contact with that which we would otherwise think is impossible to make contact. That in a certain sense, God is so other, he is so transcendent, he is so above in every detail of our lives, that we would think him unapproachable. But somehow those very qualities make him immanent. They make him accessible. They make him make it possible to connect with him. It's almost almost a paradox. This notion of kedusha, of sanctity. There's something about it. In fact, when you approach it, let's say you're approaching the Beit HaMikdash. What is, if you ask somebody, let's say you were talking to the architect, you're talking to Bezalel of the Mishkan, and Shlomo's architect, maybe Shlomo himself, when it comes to the first Beit HaMikdash, and maybe Herod's guys, when they're refurbishing the second Beit HaMikdash, if you ask them, what are you looking for? Oh, what experience do you want people to have when they approach this, when they enter the courtyard, or even when they approach and they first see it? What do you want people to feel? What do you want them? Because let's say even nowadays, you have a synagogue. There's different experiences depending on the design of the building, just the design of the building. There was one synagogue that's on Sheridan Road. It's not Bethel, the other one. There's one, they're not far from each other. There's a very big synagogue there. It was designed by like a Japanese architect. And when you go in, you just feel it's just an immense room, the synagogue itself, the place where you pray. The ceilings are very high, and you just feel like you're in something large, bigger than you. There's other synagogues, like let's say Dar Heinom, the synagogue that I pray in, where it's designed to make you feel like you're like in a family room, right? Like you're in a group of people. That it's by design. It's meant to give you that sense that you're part of a community in a familiar and friendly kind of atmosphere. Those are two very different experiences when you're going in, and they each have their place. The Beit HaMikdash, the design of the Beit HaMikdash was primarily to convey awe, A-W-E, awe. Manora hamakom hazeh. That's what, when Yaakov wakes up from the ladder vision, he says, how awesome is this place? Manora hamakom hazeh. Ein zeh ki'im beis Elohim. This is none other than the house of God. There was, and it's this sense of awe. Even Ramosha Shapiro said the word aron for ark is the opposite of norah. Aleph Resh Vav Nun. Norah is Nun Vav Resh Aleph. That the ark, which is at the epicenter of the Beit Hamikdash and of the Mishkan, it's like our experience of awe as the awe comes down. So our primary connection, our primary emotion when we approach the building, let's say the Mikdash, which is the sanctuary, is meant to be awe, the experience of awe. And we tend to have awe in the presence of people that are least approachable, or buildings that are least approachable, or geological formations that seem the least approach, just because they're so vast or so big or so different or so beautiful that so on the one hand, you have that sense of distance, that I'm a peon, I'm just this tiniest nothing compared to what this other thing is. That's often the experience of awe, when I'm having the experience of awe. And yet somehow this is also a point of connection that allows us to feel a sense of connection. He says here, I want you to be holy. Kadoshim tiyu, you shall be holy. Why? Ki kadosh ani, because I am kadosh. In other words, there's something almost imitatio die or day, the imitating God in this process. How is it that you make this point of contact? How do you get to this sense of closeness to God? By imitating this behavior, or to the best of our ability, to those aspects of those characteristics that make God what we would call holy, that we would think of as holy. By living in that same model, we not only represent the divine, but to some extent in the world, but we also are able in this way to connect to God, to deeply connect to Him. So like what would be some examples? So let's read it this way. There's a different way of reading this, but this is a very likely way of reading it. This is an acceptable way of reading this parsha. It's the simple way, but it is, I want you to be holy, and what follows is the recipe for how you can be a holy nation. I want you to be a holy, and by the way, this is in plural, kadoshim tiyu, you shall be plural. This is talking to the people in general, the Jewish people in general. This is a national goal. It's not just speaking to individuals, that you as an individual should try to achieve this, but that we as a people should be holy. So it starts by saying, Ish imo va'aviv tira'u. A person should have awe of their parents. Veshabsosai tishmoru, and you shall keep my Sabbaths. Ani Hashem Elokeichem, I'm the Lord your God. So the first two on the list is have awe for your parents and to keep the Sabbath. So right away you have awe. I mean, you have that notion of awe. Having awe for other people is not something we in Western culture are trained to do. I mean, we may accidentally do it mostly for people that are famous. If it's in Western culture, it's because they're famous or very wealthy or very powerful people. In their presence, we tend to have awe. But the notion that you would have awe for a parent is not as obvious. Honoring your parents, you could like in the Ten Commandments, when it says to have honor, even that, we don't have lots of mentoring on how to actually honor other people. There are other cultures that are much better at it. Jason was in Japan not long ago, and Japan has a reputation for being much better at showing honor to parents and people like that, to your elders. But we're not just talking about honor, we're talking about awe. And again, that feeling of awe is what you would, it's on that spectrum with fear. It's not exactly fear. It's the sense of the grandeur. It's the sense of the bigness, of something that you're near. Like it's what you feel when you're at the Grand Canyon or at a great waterfall or at a great mountain, or where there's a great vista. There's just the enormity of it, our smallness compared to. That's one of the sort of refreshing parts of awe, because awe, you would think, is not something you'd want to stay in too long, because there's fear. There is a little bit of fear connected. But one of the refreshing parts of awe is that it sort of disappears. So all my noise, that's going through all my noise and all the static and all the stuff that I'm experiencing in my brain suddenly is quieted when I'm in one of those circumstances of awe, when I'm there.
Like at the wall.
Right. So you have, yes. So you could have it there, but and every once in a while you have it around around a person. When you have it around a person, again, it's usually maybe it's somebody who of great achievement, and you've read about them and you weren't expecting to see them, and then you sort of bump into them and you might be awestruck at that moment. So we're meant to have that for our parents. We're meant to have that for our parents. So imagine the work just to do that. Just to do that, where you're really working to the point where you when you encounter your parents, it's not just, again, you're not just practicing to honor them. What is honor? Honor is from the root kaf vet daled, kabed et avicha vet imecha. Honor your father and mother. Kabed, kaf vet daled. That root, it means weight, something that's weighty. weight, weighty, something that's weighty. It has gravitas. When you demonstrate in your behavior that the other person has substance, is a person of substance and of weight, that is how you show honor. That any reaction or part of your interaction that indicates that the other person is a person of substance and has gravitas, that is honor. So you recognize them when you see them. It's visible in your reaction that you see them, that you think of them as substantial. So you stand when you're in their presence. You speak with certain tones of respect, etc. Because as you do that, each time you give indication of their substance, of their weightiness. So that's honor, but awe is something more. Awe is you would never sit in their seat. Somebody would say, why don't you sit in their seat? The notion that you would, the notion that you would sit in their seat is just like, are you kidding me? Like what my wife, when we got engaged, she was living in Beit Vegan, this neighborhood in Jerusalem, where she was working as a madricha, like a counselor at a school in the Bay Yerushalayim. And it was in Beit Vegan. And my teacher, Moshe Shapiro, lived in Beit Vegan. So, and I told Tzipi, that I'd like to come for Shabbos, but I don't really know anybody to stay with in Beit Vegan for Shabbos. She said, why don't you call Moshe Shapiro? Why don't you ask Moshe Shapiro if you could stay at his house? It was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like we, at the same time that we loved him, we adored him, we were terrified of him. I mean, it was like you were terrified of him. So the idea that I'm going to go up to him, when I spoke to him, I always stuttered. I was like, never came out that I wasn't stuttering at first when I was talking to him, because that was like awe. Like there was like in his presence, I could not ever be relaxed and I would certainly never do something like, can I stay at your house for, it was just like, so, and the craziness of it is the indication of the awe in my mind. Are you absolutely crazy? It was like the Jewish people when they said,
anyway.
right? Yeah. It was like the Jewish people here, they're at Sinai and they're saying it's like a fire that's going to consume us. And Moshe says, this was just to create awe. Don't worry, it's just to create awe. But that sense, it was almost, it's not just that I wouldn't want to, you believe that you will be consumed if you got too close. And weirdly, ironically, this experience is also a deep experience of bonding. It doesn't seem like it should be. It should be the opposite. It's like you can't get closer, right? But of your relationships, at least until you start to have friends, and then you have friends, and you're going to get married, and obviously you're eventually developing very deep relationships, but it's possible that they won't be deeper than the relationship you had with your parents. There are certain elements of the relationship that can't be deeper. They gave you life. They were there nurturing you at the very first. It's not possible that there are certain elements of that relationship that couldn't be closer. On the other hand, you're not friends. I mean, and nowadays, in the last 100 years or so, parents have been encouraged to be friends with their children. But before then, it doesn't seem like that was, based on my reading and watching movies and television shows that take place in the past. It doesn't seem like you were encouraged to be your parents' friends. But that's not the only friends.
Not
Is
until
1K of a
their
relationship.
They have grandchildren. You
Right.
can be friends with them then.
Right. Grandchildren is different. You're right. You're absolutely right. There's children and then there's grandchildren. So on the one hand, you have like this relationship of awe. Let's say we can be successful and have that relationship of awe. At the same time, it's our closest relationship, or at least up until a certain point in our lives, it's our closest relationship.
Right.
So it could be you somehow have both. You're able to have that sense of otherness and transcendence, and at the same time a bond. And Shabbos as well. Shabbos is, let's say that on the first, you're experiencing Shabbos as described in the first tablets. So that one is about Shabbos of creation. So what is Shabbos? Shabbos is an opportunity to reflect on the fact that God created the universe, right? 6 days he created, and then he rested on the seventh day. So why am I doing that? I'm sort of commemorating that. I'm acknowledging that. I'm meditating on that. I'm contemplating on the fact that he's a creator of the universe. Of the universe. There's not something bigger than that. He created the universe. There's nothing bigger than that. So if you're going to pick an aspect of God that you want to focus on, there's nothing bigger than that. He's the creator of the entire universe. But somehow, in the contemplation that, the remembering that, the meditating on that notion, somehow there is a palpable sense of immanence, of closeness to God, that he's somehow present. That sense is closest on Shabbos. It's closest on Shabbos. Again, that almost contradictory experience of Kedusha. It is the first thing made holy. The first thing that's made holy is Shabbos, of anything. It's that we're told of. God sanctified it. He blessed it. He sanctified it. It's Kodesh. It's Shabbos Kodesh. It's this thing. It has this combination of both being a way of imitating God, emulating God, and connecting to God in the same moment. David Foreman, I was just listening this morning. I was sharing this with Lois from a different class. That David Foreman, he has a series of lectures at Aleph Beta. Some of these lectures, there's like different subscription levels. Okay, there's one subscription level. I think it's $18 a month. That one you get, I think, access to all the material, all the recorded material. I don't know if you need to have that one to see these courses. I think you might. It's called a premium or whatever. But there are courses available at that premium level that are just breathtaking. All of his stuff is breathtaking, but this stuff is just one delicious thing after another. And he always looks like he's just thought about this and maybe there's something here. And then he goes through like all these details, and by the time he's finished, it's just yeah. So so he was talking about Shabbos, and he had Shabbos as described in the second tablets. In the second tablets, Shabbos is about Yetzias Mitzrayim, about taking us out of Egypt. In the first tablets, it's about creation. But he has the language from Shabbos in the second tablets, which is a couple verses, and he compares that to just, I think, 2 verses in chapter 2 of Bereshis, where it talks about placing Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And he shows how the language in both of these parallel each other. There are keywords in the Garden of Eden that are also the keywords in Shabbos. And this, besides other specific ideas that he's able to teach using that, one of the points he makes is that what Shabbos is in time, the Garden of Eden is in space. And what Shabbos is in time, the Mishkan is in space. The Beit HaMikdash is in space. So Shabbos and the tabernacle, Shabbos and the Garden of Eden, they are the same idea, but one is the idea experienced in time, and the other one's the idea experienced in space. And this is one of those elements. This element of that we're talking about of Kedusha, of that at the core, at the nature, there is this thing that seems almost impossible, but that if you imitate if you practice kedusha, a lifestyle or activities in your personal life that are considered kadosh, that are considered holy, then you are able to, at the same time, reflect on God's transcendence and make contact with him. These are a series, a kind of recipe. This, especially this first part of the Torah portion of Kedoshim, it's a kind of recipe for exactly this. You will both become godlike and make deep personal contact with God at the same time as you recognize in your actions, as you're reflecting, how transcendent God is, how seemingly impossible he should be to make contact with. These share this quality. They cause you to sort of turn into a model of this kind of godliness at the same time that they allow you to connect deeply to him, and as you reflect on almost the impossibility of that connection. And that is about Kedoshim. And I am grateful that we got this opportunity to talk and share. And I look forward to talking and sharing with you guys next week.
Yes.
I suggest
Rabbi,
next week as a time to do it. Yes, ma'am.
just trying to see how when a chassan says to his kala hareyat mekudeshet li, how that could be more than just I'm setting you apart from other men.
Yes, this is
Actually.
that concept. This is that, because there you're only, that was the thing about Dr. Eliezer Berkowitz's point, which is there are people who see it as separation and otherness, but don't include the immanence part, the connection. They don't include that this is, I agree with you, that word hareyat mekudeshes li has to be understood in the full meaning of it, in the fullness of it. Behold, you are sanctified unto me. That's what we mean. And something that
That would be nice. That would be nice.
It would. It's not just would be nice.
But it isn't
It's
looked
it.
at like that usually. Okay.
No,
Especially
because if somebody's not looking at it, they're not looking at the whole thing. They're
right,
just being.
okay, that's good.
It'll be the same thing as when somebody says, "Love your neighbor as yourself." Is not really about loving them. It's only about acting as if you like them. It's the same thing.
Civilized.
All right. Be well.
We have class Thursday.
We do.